When we were doing the fairs and festivals, we had no funding. We did a fundraiser in Ninkasi that summer and raised like $500. And then we did a sit-down dinner. After that, we had like $11,000 total.
You started with $11,000.
Yes.
And now you're at 90,000 people.
It just sort of grew, and those people who supported us early and bought memberships before they had proof that we were able to do what we wanted to do are my heroes. Because
Wow.
if we hadn't had all those people buy memberships when we were really small and not super impressive, we wouldn't have been able to continue.
Welcome to The Hurdle, a podcast where we talk to interesting, everyday entrepreneurs.
We tell our stories. I'm Max.
I'm Jade.
Let's dive in.
Let's go. In honor of National Women's Small Business Month, we're so excited to have Amelia with us today. She's a visionary behind Adventure Children's Museum, a nonprofit here in Eugene, Oregon that serves children and families. Amelia started Adventure in 2015, just with a few mom friends. It was an idea that they came up with at her son's preschool co-op. Now it's a community hub that served 90,000 children and families just last year. Amelia has also run into quite a few challenges as she's been growing this organization. Everything from financial issues to zoning regulations that have been tricky to navigate. So today on the podcast, we'll talk to her about those challenges, how she's managed to navigate them, and see what's next for Amelia. We're super excited to have her here today, and thanks for listening. Here we go. What kind of led you to starting the Children's Museum?
Sure. I went to art school and worked as a bookseller and a display artist and made pizzas for Little Caesars and worked in customer service doing that kind of stuff for a long time. I got out of doing book selling after many years. I think a third of my work life by that point had been all book selling. And then I moved into doing book cover design, graphic design for the interiors of books for a publishing company here locally. And then my son was born, and he was born early. And then I was not working. I was staying home as a stay-at-home parent, which I didn't think would happen, and it did. I feel like from there, it was just sort of all downhill. Just like I was on this roller coaster ride, and one thing followed another, and it kind of made sense eventually to do what I'm doing now. He went to a co-op preschool, and so I was doing parent teaching for a lot of, like 2 or 3 years. And then when he moved on to kindergarten, I was doing preschool teaching because they had brought me in to do subbing, and then it was a long-term substitution. And I really enjoyed working in the preschool and doing art projects and stuff with kids. And so he was in kindergarten, and I started... We had previous to preschool been on a lot of adventures together out in the world, doing like museum visits around town and up to Portland and Salem and all those places. And every time we would come back from something like that, I would say to whoever we'd gone with, "Oh gosh, I wish everybody could do what we do. We're so lucky to be able to go and do these things." And it was a really short jump from there to, hey, we should start something like this. And some people were into it. Most people were supportive, at least. And then it I'll go back to the roller coaster analogy, just sort of kept going. And definitely there have been uphills and downhills, but it's been pretty great.
Well, it's super impressive that, and I want to kind of go back to how it really got traction in the beginning there, but it's really impressive and like kind of astounding that we don't live in a very large city here, right, in Eugene, Oregon.
It's large for Oregon, but
Right.
not for anywhere else.
But last year, I think you said you had 90,000
visitors. Yeah, plus in 2023, and we're on. I think we're still on course to be at 100,000 by the end of this year. Those are estimates.
And this is just an idea that came about from conversations with other moms from the preschool
and some dads, and the fact that I had a kiddo, and I'm not someone who can stay at home as a stay-at-home parent, and I figured probably there were lots of other stay-at-home parents who also needed to get out and do stuff with their kids. And so we went to all the museums locally, and lots that were not kid friendly. history museums, for example, where they don't want kids to touch stuff. Oh man, we had some experiences.
With the little boy running around.
He was a very active kiddo, and he was tiny and very curious and wanted to get into everything. And I feel like those kinds of things, sort of lead you down a certain path. Earlier than that, though, like I have a niece and nephew, and my brother and sister-in-law would bring them up to visit. And I always had like typewriters out in my living room or jars of change that they could count. I didn't have toys at the time because I didn't have a kiddo. They're many years older than my son. But just having those things, it was like, okay, one of our first exhibits, we need to have typewriters. Kids love typewriters. We need to have something to sort because kids love sorting. Some kids love sorting things and putting them into piles. And so I just feel like all of these experiences, even the customer service working for Pizza Place, like it all just kind of combined to make this, I don't know, I feel like I'm in the right role. I feel like I'm learning to be better at it than I was when I started. And the stuff that I hate is becoming less odious. So it's good.
It's really awesome.
Well, the concept of a children's museum, I didn't even know those existed. I didn't know what that was. And then when we went and visited you, I was blown away. I mean, it was so cool all the time. I mean, like, I'm going to bring Bo, my little kid. And he's
Please do.
Yeah, I think he's probably can go every single day and play with something different for an entire year.
I know, it's so large.
We do have families who have memberships who come at least once a week. Sometimes they get on a roll and they're there every day for long periods. It's I want to tell you, when I was growing up, we had a children's museum. I grew up in Southern Oregon, the Jacksonville Children's Museum, but it was like in the former jail next to the former courthouse. And the courthouse had the regular museum, and the jail had the children's museum and the
jail.
The children. So they had like the one of the interactive things they had was a jail cell you could go into, and there was a leg iron attached to the side of the cell. But most of it was hands off. Like, this is a bed in a bedroom that a child would have lived in the 1800s. I don't know if you've been to Jacksonville. It's like a historic town in Southern Oregon.
Yep.
So it was basically a history museum with stuff that kids had back in the 1800s, 1900s, that kind of stuff. Not very interactive. So that was definitely not an inspiration, but I've always loved museums in general. So I think that kind of fed into the whole thing too. But
Okay. Well, talk to us about how it came to be. So it was an idea. You had some moms and dads that you had talked to about this idea. And there was an interest meeting at a brewery in town. Like, how did it unfold?
So after I talked to a couple of people about it, and my husband, Sean, didn't say, hey, don't do that. I sat down with some people at Falling Sky when they had their branch over in Blair. And I said, hey, this is my idea, and I don't know if we can do it. I think we can. We've got enough talent in this room to put some stuff together and give it a go. At that meeting, several people signed up to be advisors, and several people signed up to be board members. And then I had a mentor that I was working with, who I sat down with like 2 or 3 times and was giving me all sorts of advice about things. And he was a member of this group over in Springfield. I think it was the Springfield Redevelopment Corporation. It's like a nonprofit group where they were trying to revitalize that whole area in downtown Springfield. So he was a member of that and brought me to one of those meetings. And someone at that meeting told me, you need to get your nonprofit status as soon as possible.
Okay.
So then I filed nonprofit paperwork. I took it to a lawyer first to make sure everything was in order. We got that filed like a month after our first meeting.
Wow.
Had it
you
approved.
Moved fast. So you didn't have a fiscal agent at first?
No.
Okay. So you weren't receiving donations under another organization's 501c3? No. Wow. So that shows a level of commitment, right? To file for the 501c3 right off the bat.
Yeah, and I think it was because they advised us to do it so that we could start getting donations and people would believe that we were serious about our project. And there had been several projects in the area previous to ours where people had tried to start a children's museum or indoor play structure kind of a thing, and that had all sort of dissipated over time. So we were really fighting against those forces as well. Like, we wanted to show that we were serious, that we meant business. I told my board members early on, stop saying we're trying to start a children's museum. Say we're starting a children's museum.
I love that.
Because I feel like the more certain we were, the more sure it was to happen. Any sort of hedging of bets or expressions of doubt, just don't do it.
Well, it's hard to sell an idea or a concept without actually having something to show and being kind of hesitation, I would think, that would, be heard from people like, ooh.
Yeah, and I think that's part of why we were so eager to get into a space and get stuff set up and just show people. I admit too, I was super naive in the beginning. I was telling everybody, oh, we don't really need that much money. We can do a lot with cardboard, and people were like rolling their eyes, and I didn't even know why. But yeah, I feel like we got into our space. Let's see, I think it was March. No, it was December of the following year that we got into our space in the Valley River Center, and
which is a mall here in Eugene,
right,
Oregon.
yeah, they made us an offer we couldn't refuse with the money that we had available to us, and yeah, it was. I think that was the biggest part in getting the ball rolling. There were people who believed in the project when we were just 3,500 square feet of exhibit space, which allowed us to expand into the back half of our space, making it 11,000 square feet. Wow. And then this past year, we expanded again into the neighboring space by blasting a hole through the wall. And now we have 15,000 square feet of exhibits and classrooms and that kind of stuff. So it's just kept growing. And
yeah. So talk to us about the early days. You started as pop-ups in local parks.
Yes. It was during fairs and festivals. We called it our Summer of Adventure, the first year that we got going. And so we had a few different things that we'd bring with us, some of which are still in the museum. We've always had the dinosaur dig.
The dinosaur dig, what's that?
So we have several wooden tables that we built in my garage that we added various substrates to. Currently, it's rubberized bark mulch. For a while, it was sand, but sand in museums don't mix.
Okay.
Don't do it.
Children and sand inside.
Oh gosh, yeah, they would throw it in the wind table and they'd pour it in each other's eye. It was miserable.
Yeah.
Plus, it makes the floor super slick, so it was a no-no. Lots of museums do it successfully. We could never find the magic formula to make it work. So we had that, and now we have the bark mulch. They dig for fossils, some of which are 3D printed, some of which we ordered through suppliers, some of which are just, plastic dinosaurs. And now we've expanded that exhibit to include foam dinosaur bones so they can build skeletons. But
dinosaur bones.
There's a company called Imagination Playground that makes like the big blue blocks that we have in our museum as well. And they make these foam dinosaur kits that you can assemble.
Whoa, that's
kid-sized skeletons.
Cool.
It's really cool.
Well, and didn't you just have Dinosaur Day, right?
We did just have Dinosaur Day, and it was super fun. We have 3 sizes of the dinosaur bones now, and we had people in costumes, and it was a great
That's so
a
cool.
great
Oh
day.
my gosh.
But the other exhibit that we brought around everywhere at the time was our newspaper office. So we had like this mini printing press that I made, and we had, like desks set up with the typewriters, and we had information about how to make a newspaper and the history of newspapers and all that boring stuff that I would have been into when I was a kid. And we did, I want to say 15 or 16 fairs and festivals that first summer, just trying to get traction.
15 or 16.
Yeah, that's my recollection.
Pretty much one a week, right?
It was 1 or 2 per week. Yeah, it was a lot.
You were
we
hustling.
We did the county fair at that time too, so we were out there for the whole length of the fair, and yeah, it was a big deal. And when we were doing that, we had a board member who, her job is doing surveys. And so she provided for us a survey to give to people to see if it was a feasible project, if people would support it.
I love that that's how you started.
Yeah, it was super great. And it showed a lot of, it was important data. Like if people had said they didn't want us to do it or wouldn't support it,
right,
I would have had questions about why.
Right.
But the interesting thing that it showed us at the time was, yes, people wanted this for our area. Yes, people thought it was a good idea. And did they think that people would financially support it? And that was more questionable. So we didn't know if we could get money to make this thing happen at first.
And how much funding at that point in time did you have available for the project?
So when we were doing the fairs and festivals, we had no funding. And we did a fundraiser in Ninkasi at some point that summer and raised like $500. And then we did a sit-down dinner where we had numerous people come and we talked to them about the idea, and they paid a certain amount to be at dinner, and sometimes they made donations. After that, we had like $11,000 total.
You started with $11,000.
Yes.
And now you're at 90,000 people in 1 year.
And it's, that first year we made under $70,000. The second year we made close to $70,000. It was like, it just sort of grew. And those people who supported us early and bought memberships before they had proof that we were able to do what we wanted to do, are my heroes. Because if we hadn't had all those people buy memberships when we were really small and not super impressive, we wouldn't have been able to continue.
You wouldn't have enough timeline to get to the point where you needed to get to or wanted to get to, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of you're up against the wall a little bit.
How did you come up with this idea to have people buy memberships before you even had something for them to invest in?
I feel like someone recommended that to me. I had I think Kim was a volunteer early on and an advisor, and then later she was an employee, but that was years later. She had done museum studies over at the university, I think, and she said, you need to start selling memberships. And I was like, but we don't really have a museum open yet.
Yeah.
So it took us 3 months from getting the space to opening our first run of exhibits, and we were really clear with people up front, hey, it only costs $20 per person per year because we don't have a lot yet, but it's going to get bigger. And we had a lot of people buy in at that point because they trusted us, whoever my board members were who were pitching it to them.
The board members were pitching this to folks in the community.
Yeah, to their friends lists on Facebook and people they knew at preschool.
This is very grassroots. This is very cool.
Yeah. Thinking back over all of it, it's kind of amazing that it worked because when you have that little money and you're starting something like this, the Association of Children's Museums has these publications that they put out and they say, hey, you need this much money per square foot to build exhibits in your museum and to get started. And we didn't do any of that. I think the way that we started our museum is more like people started museums back in the 40s and 50s, like children's museums. It was just, hey, we need a place for our kids to play on days when it rains. So whose house are we going to be at? And what are we going to do this week? And so we started more like that, which I think is fitting because we mostly were preschool parents at the time that we got started. So
yeah, and it rains here a lot.
It does rain here a lot. So it makes sense
that we were trying to figure out what to do with the children.
Yeah. And I mean, we are a small town, but we're the second or third largest town in Oregon, depending on whose statistics you're looking at what year. And the fact that Salem had one for so many years and we didn't have one yet was always just sort of weird to me. Like, why didn't this start years ago?
Well, and then why did the 4 other tries, why did they not work? Because I think you remember you tried to reach out to them.
There was at least one that got pretty far in the process. They had like a big festival about whales or something over at Alton Baker. I don't remember the name of the startup right now. And I think that their mission was so closely, this is what I'm getting from other sources anyway, their mission might have been so closely aligned to the Science Center that for them it made sense to just support the Science Center.
Gotcha.
And for us, our that's a science museum here locally. For us, I started out thinking along similar lines, like, oh, lots of sciencey stuff, lots of, high-tech exhibits. And then I was talking with Alice Parman, who's kind of she's a big deal in the museum industry. She's worked in museums all over the United States, and she lives here locally now and is retired. But I was talking with her, and she said, no, I see for you more of a grassroots kind of a thing. I see for you more of a, if it's going to work, you're going to need community support. You're going to need people who are invested. You're going to need to do this slowly and over time. And she was right. She was right. So, and also I think our focus has definitely expanded to differentiate from the Science Center. We have a younger audience typically. We have more hands-on items that are less specific to science. So we have like our little Japanese village where you can go and ride on a Shinkansen. You can go and make some sushi or some taiyaki in the restaurant, that kind of thing. We have a tennis ball machine that is sort of scientific, but also it's just fun to launch tennis balls through the air. And maybe you're just learning about cause and effect.
Yep.
And, we have our big blue blocks room where kids can just build. And so I feel like it's got something for everyone and usually more than one thing. And we always tell parents when they bring their kids in, just follow your kid around. They'll know what the best stuff is because they always do.
The current concept or the way the museum is now, was that something you had in mind when you started, or like kind of what I'm hearing is that it kind of like morphed and expanded over time, right?
I had a number of exhibits that I had drawn out, like concept art that I had drawn out early on in the process of trying to start the museum, and some of it is alive in the museum now, and others of it has still not come true yet. And then as we've got more spaces in, my board members or advisory members have suggested ideas. I have a very creative group in right now too, and so I wanted to give them the opportunity to become part of the museum. So we got a bunch of like cork boards from Oregon surplus property, and so I had each of them do a mural for our new space on the cork boards. That's not stuff that you can plan out really, and that's kind of how I work best. I get the things with the idea that we can use it for something, and then we make it into something. We should mention, too, that that's kind of how the whole museum started. We started with a lot of recycled and donated materials because we only had $11,000, and built our exhibits out of other people's cast-offs. And I studied art for a long time, so I did some of the murals. We had one of our board members, partners, do a mural in the early stages of the museum. We had people coming in on weekends to put together furniture that was donated from various places. We picked up things from here and there, and we still do a lot of recycling and reuse in the museum because I think it's an important thing to teach kids too in a really casual way. Like, yeah, this came from another museum, or you know, these chairs over here in the theater came out of an old theater, that kind of thing. So it's like our collection is very hands-on and very, and sometimes altered significantly.
Yeah.
But this model of using repurposed items is not a model that some of your early board members were not comfortable with, but they had a different vision for the museum.
Yeah,
Can you talk to us a little bit about kind of that experience
Sure.
of as it was coming to life? Some folks that were on the board had a different vision, and
Yeah, I think that's really important. Not that any of my previous board members or advisors were against recycling. That's not it. When we started, we all had sort of this idea that it would be state of the art, and we were going to raise so much money, and we were going to have, these 18 things. And I was talking with my mentor one day, and he warned me not to get too locked into founder's vision. Like, don't have such a strong attachment to your original idea that you're afraid to take an opportunity when it comes along. And so some of my board members early on were really attached to the idea of doing everything state of the art, having everything, because they want nice things for their kids. That makes total sense.
of course.
And for me, it was like, okay, I understand where you're coming from, but I think we have to do it this way. And this opportunity has come up, and I want to go forward with it. And sometimes I'm not super diplomatic, and maybe it came off differently too, but I'm learning as I go.
Yeah.
So,
but I imagine that's also a response to the financial limitations, right? So
yeah,
can you talk
fundraising
to
was
us?
slow.
Can you talk to us about fundraising, financial challenges you experienced in the early days, and eventually, I'd like to also talk about how you negotiated to get into the space you're in today. I think that story is really very cool.
Yeah. So starting out with fundraising, I, as previously mentioned, primarily studied art in school and have recently realized I probably should have taken a couple business classes along the way. I did take post-grad class on grant writing, which was very helpful. But in those early days, we came to realize pretty quickly that most grantors want projects that are shovel ready. They don't want to give you money on spec. They want to know, okay, we're doing a museum and we need this amount of money for this exhibit, and this is why this exhibit's important. And we didn't know how to express that very well in the early days, so getting money together was really tricky. Knowing how to write a budget for a grant proposal was really tricky because if you've never done anything like that before, how do you know how much money to ask for? So all that stuff kind of comes with experience. Education also helps, but experience definitely. So our first grant was for like $1,000 or $1,500. We got it from the Shopco Foundation, and we used it to buy.
Shopco. Are they still around?
I think they're still around, but not in town. So we wouldn't be able to get a grant from them now because most of these corporate grants, they want to be in the community that they're granting to. And the canopies that we bought with that grant money were what we took around to all these fairs and festivals that we were doing. Yeah. And then from there, it just, the memberships helped, admissions helped for the first almost year of the museum's operation. We were primarily volunteer run. We didn't have any paid staff for quite a while. We opened in March of 2017, and I don't think we had paid staff until, it might have been that summer, but I feel like it was more like winter by the time we got paid staff. So it was me and my board members and volunteers coming in and running the place for a long time.
And how did you determine how much to charge folks?
We looked around at what going rates were for children's museums and science museums and other places, and made ours a little lower because it was not ready for prime time yet. So, and when we started out, it was like $4, I think, and which was fair for the amount of space we had. And over time, we've increased it, but barely. So we're at $7 now per person. We still do reduced admission for folks who need reduced admission, and just keep growing that way. So up until COVID, though, we were primarily supported by our admissions and memberships. Since COVID, and during COVID, we got PPP loans, and we had some grants from local organizations that were supporting businesses through the pandemic. And post-COVID, we see the importance of being more grant funded. We have 10 staff members now. Seasonally, we can go up as high as 12 or 13. And all of that costs money. And, if you want to keep your admission rate low and you also want to pay people, a living-ish wage, you have to find the money somewhere. So a lot more now of our funding is grants and corporate donations and stuff.
But was it COVID that really kind of showed you that was like the direction?
Oh, yeah, because our income completely dried up. We were closed by the state for close to a year. I think we closed down in March of 2020 and then weren't given the okay to open until February of 2021. So, yeah, we need other sources. Yeah. People can't come here right now. We need to do something else. So.
Can I back us up before we dive into COVID
Sure.
years a little bit? So, because during the COVID years, you were already in the mall space that you are in today. I would love to talk about how you got from the fairs and festivals, pop-up exhibits, into the mall, into the space you're in today, because malls aren't cheap, right?
That's typically true.
It's not cheap to rent out space, but you were able to find a way to make it work. So I just think it's an interesting story.
Yeah, it is. And I feel like this should be a trend. There are other children's museums in malls nationally. We're in touch with a couple of people who are down at one in California. There's another one, I think, it's either in Iowa or Idaho. I can't remember who I met.
States.
Yeah, sorry, folks, who I met at a conference who were in a mall as well. One of my former board members, Christine, approached mall management with the idea of getting a kiosk during the holidays that they were releasing so we could show some of our concept art and talk about our project and maybe have a QR code so people could make donations and stuff.
Okay.
And she went to talk with the leasing agent. And the leasing agent told Christine, okay, but what you really want is a space, right? And Christine said, well, yeah, but I don't think we can afford mall spaces. If the kiosk is this much per month, we certainly can't afford a mall space.
Right.
But it turns out that this leasing agent had been the leasing agent who had helped this other children's museum get started in this mall in Southern California.
Oh, wow.
And so she was like all about it. She was like, okay, this is what we're offering. And we said, we really can't afford that because my board didn't want to commit until we got to a point where we could pay for a year's worth of lease. And then they came back to us and said, are you sure you don't want this space? And we said, well, we can't really afford that space. And she said, well, what can you afford? And I gave her a number that I was sure she was going to reject, and she accepted it. And then we had to make a museum.
That's
so
amazing.
I was like, oh no.
Now it's real.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and you offered like a third?
Yeah,
Was that what it
I think it
was?
was a third of what they had. I don't want to
No.
get my mall in trouble or anything,
Yeah,
but
of course.
we offered them about a third of what they had asked for originally, and the space was as
Because
is,
that's
so
what
we
you
had
could
to do some
offer.
updates.
Right. Well, and that's really interesting because I this is a trend talking to other entrepreneurs. Yep. It is not uncommon for folks to, with a new idea, new concept, to move into a space that isn't up to code.
Yes.
Because, in as a result, you get a better deal on rent.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about what kind of the situation was in this space? And because you're very resilient and you guys have dealt with so many hurdles just getting going.
Yes.
So yeah, it's not easy breezy in the early days.
It's not. And you
right?
don't, I mean, if you've never done commercial real estate before, I didn't understand what the pitfalls were, or how hard it was going to be, or how many times I would just cry because it was taking forever with the city, and I didn't understand. I thought they were coming after me, but they were just doing their jobs like they do for everybody else.
Right. It's not
But
personal.
I'd never done it before, and so it felt personal. Yeah, the space had been closed for a while. The first expansion, the back half of the space had been closed for like 13 years or something. The front half of the space had been a restaurant before, so it had a total different use to it. So we had to have the zoning changed. We had to have fire and safety come through and inspect everything. The fire marshal, sweet guy, came through and was like, "You want kids to be safe, right?" Of course I do. I just also want this process to go quicker. So yeah, it was like we had to have new sprinklers installed. We had to have egress lighting put in. My dad, as an engineer, and came through and did engineering plans for the space so that we could, when we were getting ready to do the pirate ship, we could prove that the building could support the weight of a pirate ship. Yeah.
So you have a pirate ship in.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Urban Lumber Company in Springfield built us that pirate ship, and they are good folks. If you have money to spend on really nice furniture, go spend it there.
Or if you want to buy a pirate ship.
Yeah, I'll just give them a plug. If you want to buy a pirate ship, they would be so into that. Yeah. They do a lot of stuff for like Make-A-Wish too, so they're good
awesome.
Good team of folks.
So how long did that zoning process take then?
Oh gosh. I mean, we only had the building. We had the building for 3 months before we opened, so that long.
3 months is a long. I mean,
it's a long time
when you're in it. Yeah, so it feels like
because
a
you're
long
still
time,
paying rent.
The mall was generous. The leasing agent, I should say, was generous with us, and worked it out so that while we were getting the space ready, we could have it for free because nobody was sure whether it was something that we could bring up to code. You have until you start digging into stuff and figuring out what's wrong with a place. You don't always know. The fire marshal finally gave us permission to open on the last day of March, 2017.
2017.
I think it was 2017.
3 years.
What year is it now?
2024.
Yeah, 2017. Okay. Finally gave us permission to open in March of that year, but only on only if we were only open during daylight hours because the egress problem hadn't been solved yet. So we had a conditional permit when we first opened to have people in the building.
So why were you only able to be open during daylight hours?
Yeah, there's a provision in the building code, maybe multiple provisions, that require you to have appropriate emergency lighting. So if the power goes out and the generators don't kick on, you have emergency lighting to lead everybody safely to an exit.
Okay.
And this space did not have that going back through the expansion space that wasn't open yet. But the point was that we were not allowed to open until that was corrected. And I said, okay, but we have to start paying rents.
Right.
April 1st. So what can we do? And he said, well, I can give you a conditional permit if you're only open during daylight hours because we have skylights. So we were able to open, and it was such a relief. It was like the very last day of March, which was the month that we had told people we were opening in. So it was.
So what is it like when
scary.
You just want to open a museum, right? Yeah. That's what you want to do.
Sure.
But then you have to deal with months and months and months of all of this back and forth. How do you how do you handle that? Like in the frustration and probably feelings of like, I don't know, maybe defeat is too strong of a word, but how do you handle that?
Like poorly. I had a 6-year-old kid at home too, so I was dragging him along with me to like, okay, it's time for us to go and sand the floors. Get in the car.
You're sanding the floors.
Well, we did everything. We didn't have contractors come out for anything that we could do ourselves. So we paid to have mechanical, and we paid for the fire and safety, and then we did the rest of it ourselves. My board members luckily had some resources. One of them is married to an electrician. Couple artists among us, people who, had resources for various things. So yeah, it was hard. Like looking back at it now, we made it through, and that was hard. That was hard. But also worth it. Like the first day we were open was the soft open, and a few families came through, and then we had our grand opening, which is a photo that I have, and it's like, oh gosh, so emotional. Aww. We're all standing there in the lobby for the first time with a lot of people, and like all these kids are just clamoring to get inside, and the emotion involved, because you've been through so much, and to be able to make it through all of that and then be able to actually do it.
You're so committed to the idea.
Yeah.
And you still don't know if it's going to work or not. And then it finally, that first day, God, that must have been.
It was so great.
And how many years is that after the Falling Sky Brewery interest
like 1
meeting?
year. One and a half. Yeah, it was like October of 2015 that we met for the first time. We got the space.
That is
like
amazing.
I said, I'm super impatient.
A year and a half, Amelia.
Yeah, it was really quick. A year and a half with $11,000. I wouldn't recommend everybody do that.
Well, and again, you're not taking a salary for that whole year.
Yeah.
So you're able to find other ways to live and volunteer your time and hope that at some point you are in a position to pay yourself, because you take a salary now, right?
Yes. And all of that was possible because, well, my husband, can I just say he works here at Palo Alto?
Yeah,
my husband works here at Palo Alto. And he was really supportive from the start. He's like, I think you should try this. I think we need this in our community. And he always told me too, like, if it's open for 3 months, you're still successful because you got it open.
Yeah.
And you were open for 3 months. And then I was like, but I don't want it to close after 3 months. But he was just like very, his perspective was always, you did a thing. And if you do the thing and you get to a goal and you're successful, which was really great too, because it took kind of the pressure, like the external pressure. It took the external pressure off to be super successful those first years. And the fact that he was able to support our family while I was volunteering my time. And gosh, so many 3 a.m. nights that he was home doing story time with my kiddo and that kind of stuff while I was painting trains or whatever the heck I was doing.
Wow.
So yeah, super good to have a supportive partner. And I recommend that if y'all want to
decide to partner up, get one that's supportive.
I mean, if you're taking on something, sorry, I forgot the microphone was back here. If you're taking on a big project, having some support system, if it's a partner, or a friend, or a parent, or somebody who not necessarily financially support you, but just on those days when you're having a hard day, come and tell you, no, you've already succeeded.
Right.
To take over things that you can't get done, if you have somebody who can run to the post office, like all those kinds of things require so many people and their support. And so that's why we got where we are. Like I did a lot, but also there were other people, and Sean was the best champion.
Well, and Sean loves all the
Hope you're
projects.
listening, Sean.
Yeah, you better listen
He
to
does
Sean.
love projects.
Because I feel like he's built like half the things. In
Oh
that
gosh, yeah. He's especially interested in tech stuff and 3D printing, and so we have, he 3D printed train tracks for our train table, and he helped build the train table, and the AR sand table with the beads in it, where the elevations change and stuff. He really enjoys the process of figuring out how those things work and then making them work. So yeah,
It's awesome.
if he wasn't there building stuff, we would have a few less stuff.
Yeah.
Less stuff. So
Okay, so you move into the space.
Yes.
You're still not taking a salary.
Right.
You're making money off of memberships and admission. cost of admission. You have a small space. And then do you also have paid staff at this point?
Not for the first several months.
Okay.
I think we went into the summer without paid staff. So
Okay.
and maybe even into the fall, and then got to be the busy season, and I realized I can't do this. I was doing most of the shifts myself because a lot of my board members have jobs and things. We hired one of our volunteers to be our first staff member, Rosemary.
And how did you know financially that you were in a position to support Rosemary as a paid person?
We got to the point where it was like, okay, we have a bit of money in the bank. We're not worried about rent anymore. We're not worried about being able to pay our electric bill. And I'm overwhelmed with responsibility. So we're going to have to hire somebody to come in at least a couple afternoons a week and run the museum until dark. We have to close.
And then, yeah, right.
That went on longer than it needed to, honestly. But yeah, getting to that point where we felt a little more financially secure and seeing that the bank account was growing and that it was necessary.
It was more need-based as opposed to like, when we get to the X amount saved up, that's when we can hire.
Yeah,
it was like, no, we need someone yesterday.
Yeah. And she was there for a while. She as a retired telephone operator was working at the museum for a number of months before she had to have some knees
replaced.
Her knees had to be fixed. She's been very open about that when she talks to every member of my staff about how she was our first staff member. So I'll just share it here. Sorry, Rosie. But yeah, she was great. And then after a while, we hired a second staff member to come in, and then it just sort of grew from there as needs arose and as the museum expanded. And anytime we were like, okay, we need somebody to cover this because I can't do this anymore and we don't have enough volunteers. I was like, it was organic.
Okay. That's awesome.
I feel like there's also just longevity and sanity for yourself, right? Like it's, after the first 3 months, I'm like, okay, we're doing this. Well, could I do what I just did for 10 years? Probably not.
And it's not rare. Like the other museum in a mall that I talked about, that their original director was also working as a volunteer for a number of years, and then she retired. Because I think burnout is like the biggest thing that happens to people who are doing that, like doing hard work for an extended period with little financial or other reward. So
totally. All right. Are we almost to the COVID years at this point?
Yeah, we can talk about
that.
Yes, I don't really want you to relive that, but
I have a little PTSD. But, so pre-COVID, we'd had a strategic plan done through the universities. I think they have a strategic planning program or a nonprofit program, and we were approached, and they came and did a strategic plan for us. Just getting back to the burnout question real quickly, and one of the things that they do is they assess your strengths and weaknesses, and they assessed that I was both. Because I was doing so much and was so important to the organization. And also they predicted that I would burn out if I kept doing that for a long period of time. And then COVID came. And that was really scary and really hard. I feel like the fact that we survived COVID at all is probably because just before COVID started, I was invited to join this group of museum directors from the Northwest Association of Youth Museums, and we were meeting weekly to talk about what was happening at our organizations and how strange it all was, and the fact that we didn't know what to do. It's like nothing like this had ever happened before. Yeah. So, and then watching as like Idaho was able to reopen 3 months later, kind of a thing, because in Idaho they were saying that the threat is over, and being in Oregon and having special restrictions carved out against hands-on exhibits while bowling alleys and arcades were able to reopen.
Interesting.
Yeah, I also want to keep everybody safe. We kept people wearing masks for a long time after we were finally able to reopen, but it was a really hard year. It was a hard year. We took those PPP loans and we kept our staff, many of them anyway, working, doing craft kits and videos online.
And was this new, the craft kits?
This was
and the
all
online
new.
videos.
We had sold some like like single craft kits in our lobby that we had put together, but this was like a month's worth of crafts. And then our staff members to stay, to have that connection with the kids remain solid. We're doing the how-to videos and walking kids how to make, I don't know what all, spiders out of pipe cleaners during Halloween. And, like, we had this website we were going to, National Today, where they tell you what all the holidays and national days of remembrance are happening. So we were theming our projects in each of these monthly kits. So we had stuff to stay busy, and it didn't make a lot of money, but it was good for my staff and good for our visitors and good for me to like have something productive for all of us to be doing together in a common goal. And I know pivot was a big word in 2020. We did that. We pivoted. So
how did you stay afloat financially? You had the PPP loans, and then
pretty much
did that cover?
So we were making craft kits monthly, based around different holidays, some very obscure that would be kid friendly. And I was very proud of my staff for being able to be so maneuverable and switch their whole job description pretty much. And we were also working on refurbishing our exhibits and making sure everything was shiny so that when people came back in, it would be in great shape.
Where did that idea come from, the craft kit? Was that based off the conversations you had with other children?
It was partly that, and partly what do we have here that are our assets that we can use to do something?
And
it
makes money.
Yeah, we can't have people here. What can we do? What can we make? What can we? Yeah, and that's sort of what came out of that. It worked out really well for a long time. We were making those for longer than the year that we were closed, and I think we're probably going to bring back the holiday ones again this year in December. We did a gift making kit and a Hanukkah kit, and those are super fun. So we'll probably bring those back again.
Great.
Some of the stuff that came up during COVID is actually very useful.
That's awesome.
Silver lining.
That's awesome. How did you advertise for those craft kits? How did you spread the word?
We had, when we sign people up for membership, we get their contact information. So we had a mailing list that was pretty extensive, and we were mailing to our members and letting people know, hey, your membership's on hold while we're closed. Do you want to do these craft kits in the meantime? That was basically it. We were supported on those from people that we were already in touch with through the museum. So
awesome. Yeah. And then at some point you found a way to also reopen because there were some loopholes with COVID.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about those loopholes and how you were able to
childcare was an issue during COVID. So one of the things that the state was allowing was if you wanted to do camps or you wanted to do child care centers, you could open those during COVID without the usual formality of licensure and that kind of thing. And, so we did summer camps. We did a lot of summer camps that first year. We did some, I don't think we did anything over, because we were closed in March, and then summer was when we did our first round of camps. And that was kind of freaky too, because there were no vaccines. So we had all the kids and ourselves all masked up for every camp session.
And what age of children were you serving?
I think that first year we did maybe 4 through 8 or 9.
Little ones. We
We have aged it up a little bit over the past couple of summers because, there's some issues with potty training with the littlest.
4, yeah,
So,
absolutely.
it's a little older now. But.
Okay.
Well, I bet those parents were very appreciative. I mean,
yeah, I think so. It was. I mean, the camps were kind of short. We only do half day because we don't have access to outside area at the mall. So we did what we could do, and it was enough for some families to be able to bring them for just a few hours so that they could still have social interaction.
Right.
And do something besides sit in their living room and
parents can have a break.
Yeah, made things a little more normal for kiddos, which is important. So. Yeah. I don't know. It felt right at the time. It was a little scary, but my staff wanted to do it too, so we did it.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Now we're on the other side.
I know. So what's it been like coming out of COVID? Where are you guys at now?
Yeah. So when we reopened in March of 2021, we were still under restrictions to just have a single family at a time for quite a while. So we were doing single family appointments, which is no way to keep a business running, but we managed. And we've been, since that time, able to slowly increase our membership and our admissions rates again. So we are surpassing our pre-COVID. Like our best year pre-COVID was 2019, and we're surpassing that this year, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
So yeah, it feels good to be, knock on wood. It feels good to be back on some solid ground, and with the grant writing that's been happening, myself and my visitor services manager Riley have been doing a lot more grant writing to just make sure that some of our important programs like Museums for All, that does those reduced cost admissions for some families, doing our performance series so that kids who haven't been able to go see live performances because of the length of or the cost of the performances can see some little snippet of ballet and maybe find something that sparks some little passion for them. We want to keep those programs going, so we've been doing a lot more grant writing, and that also helps so that if we end up having to close for anything like this again, we're more prepared for it the next time, because we know how to ask people for money. Which is important.
That's so one of the gifts that came out of COVID for you guys, it sounds like, is now you're learning how to write for grants, and you're not so reliant on admissions and memberships to cover payroll.
I think diversified means of income is super important, and I didn't fully recognize that earlier. And now I think that one of the benefits of being closed for a global pandemic is I have some self-awareness about that now, which is good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So what did the next couple years, 5 years, look like? I know earlier in a previous conversation we talked about maybe a different space.
Yeah.
That might be part of the vision for the future.
It's something we've talked about for a long time. When we talked about how we got to be where we are now, it wasn't the plan to be in a mall. We had always planned on having our own building. So we've talked about that on and off for the last 8 years. When is a good time for us to get into our own space? How do we fundraise for our own space? So we're still kind of navigating some of that, but we have a strategic planning committee. We have a savings account set aside for building savings. So we're working towards this goal.
Awesome.
And I think the biggest thing for me is I want to have some outside space. I want... I don't know if either of you had ever been up to the Portland Children's Museum before they closed during COVID. They had this great natural style outdoor playground where you could climb a tree, and you had like this little river run where you could splash in the water and send dirt down and like that kind of thing. And they had mud boots that you could use to go outside.
How fun.
So for me, it's like... we're in the Pacific Northwest. It rains a lot here, but not as much as it used to. And being able to bring kids outside so they get that exposure to natural elements while they're playing too is super important. We have great parks here, which is really lucky. But I feel like having that as part of the museum experience would be really beneficial for lots of folks. So thinking about the next 5 years, I know you asked about 2 years. I think we're just going to continue on our current course for the next 2 years, make sure that this growth is sustained. Looking forward to eventually getting into a different building, maybe changing things up a little bit, designing new exhibits for the museum. That kind of thing it's all on the horizon, which is great.
And do you think your role will stay the same over the next several years, or do you have any idea about what you want for yourself?
For a long time, especially during COVID when everything was so hard, I had the inclination to at some point move to a position where I was just making things, because my favorite part of my job is painting murals and building exhibits, and that's where my joy is in my job. Post-COVID and moving forward, I'm less burnt out and more comfortable with the stuff that was really hard before, because by comparison, it's not so hard. It's just annoying. Taxes and payroll and HR, all that stuff. It doesn't seem like such a big deal anymore, which is nice too. So I can imagine myself staying in this role for a while longer. I don't really have plans post-museum, so I don't know, maybe this is it for me. Maybe I'm locked in, guys. I don't know. I don't know. It's a career for sure. It's not a job. And what I had before were mostly jobs. So it's, yeah, 8 years in, I feel like I'm kind of committed.
Yeah.
Kind of.
So,
Well, and it's so beautiful to see the way it's grown
Oh,
as
thanks.
you've grown, right?
yeah.
So many seasons.
Yeah. And just, I don't know, like my belief in what we're capable of has grown too. It's been nice to see Sean's woodworking skills continue to grow and my management skills continue to grow and be able to hire these young people to come in and make art at the museum to make the museum better. It's all really nice. It's just nice. It's a soft little place where we get to see kids be happy and then they leave and they're miserable. That's not great, but the rest of it is it's pretty good right now. And I just in general, my whole board is full of people who are really committed. My secretary, Cammy's been there since the beginning. She was at that first meeting at Falling Sky. And, we've gathered our other board members along the way. Tanya, we picked up at the fair that first summer when we were doing our...
I love that. Just picked
We
her
just
up at
picked
the
her
fair.
up. She was there pitching some books to me, and I was like, okay. And then eventually she was a board member, and then we just added a new board member, Kara, earlier this year, and Kendra's been there. So we've got a really good board who's really committed. We have staff members who've been there at least 2 years across the board at this point, who are really committed as well. We were told by someone that one of my staff members' acquaintances told them, I've never met a staff full of people who are so committed to a project as these folks here, that they're willing to forego like more money and more benefits. And my goal is to, of course, get those things for them because they are committed and they're good with kids and they're so talented and they help me make the place magical, and I want to be able to make their lives
They help
feasible.
me make the place magical.
Yeah, they're good folks.
Yeah.
Good folks. So that's another good goal for the next 5 years is to make it so that it's a sustainable career for them and a career path for them. And they see a, I don't know if they'll be there 20, 25 years like I will, but to see it as a longer term place for them. Also a career, not just a job.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and they believe in the mission, and it's like you should reward people who.
Yeah. Riley's been there 5 years, and CJ too have been there 5 years now, and that's a long time for people who are
really long time,
especially
in their
through
youth.
COVID.
Gosh, yeah, that's some dedication right there.
Totally.
So,
Wow. Yeah. Should we move into our lightning round?
Lightning round, let's do it.
That's my lightning round sound effect, guys.
Oh, good.
Let's do that one more time.
Okay, cool. So what is a daily habit that helps you stay grounded and connected to what's most important?
So every morning my husband wakes up and he wants a hug, and so I give my husband a hug and then give my cats tuna fish because that's what they want in the morning. So
Your husband,
he doesn't want the tuna fish.
And you don't want to
Just the
mix
hug.
those up.
No.
Yeah.
that's so funny. What's a lesson you've learned from your entrepreneurial journey that you would like to maybe share with other women during this Women's Small Business Month?
Sure. You will never feel like you are good at what you're doing until you're past it, and you should keep moving forward anyway.
Super love that.
Imposter syndrome.
Right.
Yes.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
But looking back, it's like I did all that. That's great.
Yeah. So, do you have like one piece of advice to other women or moms who are starting a business?
Keep your kids close for as long as you can because they grow up faster than you think is possible. My child was 6 when we started the museum, and now he's 14. And those years that he was able to come with me to the museum and help me with things and was very excited and positive about the project, super precious now that he is a snarky teenager. I think make sure that you spend time with him every day. And this morning I was helping him film a YouTube video on my way to work. So do what you can.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Second to last question. What is a misconception that people have about running a small business?
That you can learn everything that you need to know in a textbook or in school. Some of it you just have to learn by failing first, and that's okay. Yeah. Failure's okay, guys. It's okay.
How do you balance your roles as a mom and as a wife and as a business owner
And a cat tender.
and a cat tender?
It's a lot. It's a lot. And some days it's harder than others. Today's a tricky one. But I think you have to apply your own airbag first, right? Your own oxygen supply first. So trying to do that when possible. Coffee helps. And again, having support built in around you is really helpful. Constant reminders that sometimes tuna fish is the most important thing in the universe. That's good. Keeps you humble. It's good.
I love it. Well, thank you for joining us here today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. It's been really fun.
Yeah, yay. And thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on The Hurdle.
See ya.
Bye. Thanks for joining us today.
We'll see you next time.